Okay, my room is gradually turning into chaos. I need to organize it. So, not good. Okay, how's that sound? Show it. Okay. That quiet again? No. Yeah, your style scene looks super clean. I'm jealous. I've been thinking of trying to find someone to redo it all. I want that kind of theme again. I paid someone a couple of years ago $200 to do all the graphics and stuff, and I like the general design, but I want a consistent set of screens again, and all the ones I find online I don't like. How you doing, Patrick? Okay, that's that. That's that. Not water, drink water today. Liquid sky. Back to this scary mess. Eating your oatmeal. Nice. Nice. My wife and daughter are home this week, so I'll be eating breakfast after stream. But I did just run down to Wawa to get coffee because I needed me a cup of coffee this morning. Mr. Jones, hello. How's it going? Thank you for splitting your time. I noticed Ramble and Geek went live. Question for you before you get too much into things. Absolutely, if I can answer. Do you have any good manual techniques for change tracking? Who? Manual techniques for change tracking. Short answer, not really. Assuming you mean like model data change tracking. So without database stuff, just tracking. I have to implement something for the radio station website so I can make client-side changes to playlists, for example, and then save them instead of every change being made directly to the DB. Gotcha. So rolling up changes. So on the client side, okay. What technology are you using for the client side? You're using not Blazor, you're using, right? So one of the technologies I'm using in my client side, right, which is Angular, but I believe the pattern is, React definitely has it. When it comes to repeated or counted actions, it seems using Flutter for the front end. Oh, yes. So, sorry, yeah, I forgot that. Then I believe this will apply still. I'm using NGRX on the client side here. NGRX is a state management system, and one of the benefits it has is it kind of disconnects your database from your storage. So the storage is local, and you're really interacting with that from your components. You're not really interacting with the actual backend service. So in the case that you're doing there, rolling those changes up into like, do this, and then kind of commit the changes is possible. So you can do one commit of the state of the object rather than having all the individual things saved about it. Or so that's one of the benefits of using this. And I think Redux is the React version. The only reason I'm sharing the different versions of the library I know of is because it's the concept. So state management. So I believe that Flutter kind of works with this style normally, if memory serves. But you could roll up these as actions anyway and still save them to the database. So make client-side changes to playlists, for example, and then save them. Right, so you want to change the playlist around and then save the current state. Yeah. So you're adding songs, removing songs, reordering songs, etc., and then you want to say, okay, now save the current state of it. This sort of pattern would be exactly what you want, because then really what you're doing is you're not changing. Every call that you're making is actually to change the store, and the store contains the current state of the application, and then you can save the playlist state, I suppose. Although, I mean, there are some examples of how to do undo redo with this as well. So provide a model into NGRX. Well, so it looks like Flutter does have some basic state management stuff, and you might be able to kind of mimic this behavior in Flutter. Yeah, so they're doing. It's been a while since I've looked at Flutter, so I don't know quite what I'm looking at. Change notifier. There you go. So change notifier. You make the changes in your data, in the state, and it will tell things. It'll say things have changed. Because then you're only changing your local state. You're not actually changing the data, and your providers for your changes know to save the state. So it's something that I haven't done a lot of, and I'm trying. It's actually this. It's funny you bring this up now because it's kind of this is why I'm doing this stream today. Is because I went so far with a certain design, and I don't think that it's what I want it to do, and I need to pull it back and figure out, okay, what I've got things working, but I don't think they're working right, and I think they need to be changed. So that's how I'm doing it now. With every change notification results in a backend API call which writes to DB. Right, but you don't need to change. But you're modifying the state. But if you don't save it every time, when would you save it? Right, are you going to put a save button on there, or because you could use a change provider to capture the list of action, the list of changes, right? The actual modifications. But either I need to track every notification, then take every client-side action against the DB, then save the, or I need to clear the whole object from the DB and refill it to something. True. So I mean, but you do. So your problem is twofold. In that you don't want to maintain, you don't want to essentially maintain the database state object on the client, but you don't want to make a ton of calls. So where do you track changes? You could send the changes up to the server and store those individual changes and then roll them up into one action, but one transaction. Tracking changes on the client side isn't really a struggle. It's not making million DB calls long. Yeah, well, that's kind of. I've done this in the past. So you could disconnect the actual save from the. So if I go to planning here, I don't have enough endpoints to really demonstrate this effectively, but if I go to planning or even requirements, right? So when I post this, I send this command. If I queue this command instead of actually sending it, that change is technically pending, right? So instead of actually sending this command to actually change the data, I queue it. I've got all the data I need. It would apply later on. It just doesn't go into the database immediately. And then I add a requirement, as long as I track the order they come in properly, right? Which in your case, you're making the changes from one client. So it's not like you need to deal with two people changing the same playlist at the same time. If you save these as individual actions, and then when you hit apply or whatever on the playlist, it basically executes all the actions one by one in one transaction. That would be a way. I think you make. Sorry, if I was say I'm indecisive about where I want to track them in a playlist. I move it up, then down, then back up, etc. You don't want to really amounts to one shift of a few positions, tracking every change action and then committing them on clicking the save button is a bunch of redundant calls. It is. It is. And you could deduplicate if you like kind of store the change actions as kind of an action list, right? It's basically undo, redo. You could dedupe them. Say, okay, I've already got this change, or I've already got a change for this position. I don't need to save this, or I need to replace the existing one. You could do that, or you could still reapply them if you're just loading the playlist out, making all the changes, and then hitting save changes. You could actually it wouldn't matter then, right? I don't know of anything that does it, so yeah. But all I would do here, all I would introduce as a difference here would I create a system of, I create a queue table, and you need a session though from the client, so you need something to unify the actions, right? So because then if someone else was in the system doing changes to playlists, that'd be a mess anyway, because if two people touch the same playlist, you could end up with a really weird behavior. But you could serialize, yeah, and that's kind of the beauty of this, because when I publish the notifications from this system, right, I store them in the outbox, right, and all these are serialized versions of those commands, right? Of those notifications, right? So all this notification outbox is essentially what I'm suggesting you do. You instead of the notifications going there, these sends would go there. You store them as a sequence of actions against a playlist, and then later on you play them back, or and you can play them back as one group of things. So you could actually just deserialize them. So the deserialized code is in a separate library for the. Come on, load the project. The Outbox Publisher, Services, Outbox Monitoring. So what this does is goes and retrieves the message from the Outbox and then essentially publishes it, right? So you need something similar to this where you basically say, okay, well, now perform these actions on the object, and you could wrap that up in a transaction. I think this is the sort of thing that you come across and you're like, what do I actually look for, right? What pattern? And when you see it once you've done it, you know what you see, right? Now the only thing I think to look up is kind of an undo redo stack against database changes or something like that, where someone might have implemented that sort of behavior to avoid excessive read writes from the database. Well, this code, this outbot stuff, is essentially what I'm suggesting you do, just a little bit different, right? Because essentially, right now, I don't think you're using mediator or any pattern like that. So all you need to do is store the action, and then loop through those, deserialize them, and then perform those actions on the database. This is a little overkill for what I'm suggesting, but it's essentially this code where you're going to say, okay, retrieve the next message, and that is, where are you? Here you go, outbox storage. So this just literally pulls the message out and then deserializes it because I store the type, right? In the actual data here. I store the actual type so I can deserialize it back to its correct object. Yeah. Yeah, I think that would require a lot of reworking. So it's a way. Hi, Shy. How you doing? Let's see if we can drink some of this coffee and not cough. It's funny considering my name. There are actually a lot of people that can't say it. How you doing, Shy? I can try and take advantage of your state change stuff and have a dedicated backend API. Yeah. I don't know of anything that exists for this, but I would probably go the queue path. I'd probably just say save this command, this change action. Save the parameters of it. You don't need to save the actual anything more complicated. Just save the parameters of the change, and then dequeue it. I'm doing good. I have a good feeling about the interview. I'll hear more at the start of next week. Nice. Congrats, Shy. Well done. Oh, I need to... I just realised. This camera does not work well in low light. As much as I don't want to be blinded right now. There we go, that'll be better. Okay, thanks for the input. I gotta get ready for work here, so I'll be lurking, but I might be back. No worries, Patrick. Be interested to know what solution you come up with. Hopefully I can catch a stream. Been difficult the last couple of weeks to be on in the evenings, so I don't know if you have streamed. And, yeah. He didn't ask any coding questions, but you guys helping me learn did give me the necessary confidence boost. Oh, good. That's awesome. You did a lot yesterday. Like, considering you're trying to take it on at the same time as doing it and taking input from 3 different people at once at one point, that's commendable. So, if it gave you that confidence boost, that's great. I loved it. Nice. So, okay. Where was I with this? It's a lot more fun to learn from people than simple video guides. Yeah, it is. The interactive nature. I love pair programming, right? So, for me, it was fun because I don't work in a team anymore, right? I work alone, all the time. Even on this project, right? I work alone. So having that ability to interact with others and talk about ideas and, oh, well, we could do this, a lot of software development, you kind of do, and then you don't really think about it again, or you just kind of follow the same things because it's quicker to get moving next time. And you get to understand when you try and teach someone what to do, they might ask a different question, or they might not understand something the way you did. So you have to change your approach, or at least go and understand what you're actually trying to tell them to do. Because sometimes you don't always understand the intricacies of what you're doing. I definitely do more of this if you're for it. Yeah, definitely try. Absolutely. Get the time. But, so, pair programming is really fun for that, in that respect, because you can actually share ideas at the same time as doing something. Yeah, it's productive as well. Like, some people don't like pair programming because obviously they like to just go off and do their own thing. But when you're working through a difficult problem, tonight will be the video guide though. It's still important to finish the Python code. Absolutely, definitely get through that. But you get into the point where I'd say, okay, well, when you finish that, you really should kind of try and figure out some projects that you want to build and actually, see from the ground up, because that tests your knowledge as well. Okay, what am I doing? Struggling through this, it seems. Yeah, definitely. I should attempt a game jam at some point. Really need to do something super fun as well. But I want to get this project in a good place, and I'm struggling right this second. So, Agile platform. Where am I? What is it doing? Why am I struggling? So I came to a realization yesterday, or maybe Monday. It's Wednesday, right? Yeah. I came to a realization that as much as I wanted it to work, what I was trying to do with the stores was probably not the right way, right? So oftentimes when you're building something, if it starts to feel like a struggle, if you can't find examples of it, if it feels disconnected or broken, I'm starting to really take that as an indicator to myself that something is not quite right, and I probably am fighting against the framework or the design of the thing that I'm working with to the point where I'm probably not using it correctly. And I kind of came to this realization the other day that I had this problem where I'm trying to do. Oh, where are you? Load requirements does not exist. Planning item detail component. I'm trying to build this thing and I'm making it more complicated than it should be. Or rather, I'm not sure about how to design out the actual data structure and the behavior such that I can use this effectively. So the idea of the stores, as I understood it, was to kind of pull the data together, kind of literally store it in a local version, but then be able to interact with it and react to it as well. So if it changes, things will change on screen, right? So if I actually load data in the background, the store, and I'm on a screen, right? If more data comes in from behind or whatever, then I can update this data in real time without actually changing the UI. And the store is not, the screen is not linked to the actual data, it's linked to the store and the data in the store. Okay, Jones on full website, so I keep answering backend and setting up APIs. Nice. So what I had was when I load a planning item, right? So what happens is, what I was trying to do was when I loaded a planning item, I would try and load everything else for the planning item into the same store. But I can't find examples of doing that, which is starting to make me question whether or not that's actually the right way to do it. So what I was ending up with is a load of behavior in the planning item, right, that dealt with nested objects. Well, those nested objects are harder to find, harder to deal with, because then I was like, okay, well, no, go get the state of the store, go get its requirements. So if I wanted to add a requirement, right, go get the state of the store, go get its requirements, update that requirement, etc. So, like, add requirement here, right? I'm getting the current state. I'm making a copy of the current object. I'm then changing the current object's requirements because otherwise it's read-only, so you can't get it. It's immutable. And then I patch that state back in, right? So I was constantly doing this sort of stuff. But then I've got, okay, well, now if I so this is manageable, but it's a lot more code around requirements than planning items, right? So And that's going to get worse. That's not going to get better because these items are going to get more complicated. So, okay, well, when a planning item is updated or whatever, right, what do I do? So the state of the object, right? So what I was doing initially was loading the state of the planning item with this. And then when I clicked, my intention was when I clicked into this to then make a bigger call to get more data about the planning item. So I kind of get extra detail. So that entity in my store becomes richer because I've now loaded that data. So if I don't ever click on a planning item, I don't load extra data for it. Great. I don't store anything I don't need. Right? If I click on it, it will load more data. Awesome. One of those load more data is the requirements. So I go and pull all that detail down. So if I bring up banana cake pop. Yes, that's actually the name of the tool, banana cake pop. So if I go here, I really wish to make this easier. You know, I can get a planning item. So now this is when I click into the detail page, I would run this query, which would give me all the information about the planning item, right? Oh, sorry. But now I've got a big redundant query. I'm going to get in a planning item with all this data that I already have this data, or most of this data, just to get the requirements. And the requirements is a big array. I looked it up and I was trying to look at some best practices, etc. You know, best practices on GraphQL. Don't make too many nested objects, right? So I'm running that risk here. Right. So what's the right way of handling this? What is it I'm going to do going forward? Sadly, I don't have a full answer, so I'm trying to learn, and I've got to do this. I've got to learn how to do this properly, because this will set the pattern for my entire future of this project. Right? If I'm struggling and making a mess of stores, they're not going to get less messy, and they're going to be harder to refactor later. So if I don't find some good patterns now, this is not going to work for the future. So I've kind of got to learn two things, right? Am I using the stores correctly? And if I do have that data dependency, what is the best way of managing the state of that? Because otherwise, I don't want to keep going in and trying to modify collections. That seems messy. And also the notification thing, that's the other thing. So if I add a new item here right now, right, what will happen is the store will get that item, right? And right now, when I load that, when I get that, I get told that item has changed, right? What I do is I just reload the store. Probably not the best thing to do, right? And actually, I think I changed that in the last version of this. In that, what happens is I have this subscribe notifications where I say, okay, well, tell the entity that it has pending updates, right? So when I get a notification for the entity, and I add that to the store here, so I will listen to the planning items category, and when I get it, I'll assume that my entity is going to be in here, and I'll tell it you have pending changes. So the idea there is that it will say, okay, you need to reload this entity, which is okay. But again, if I've got any pending requirements and I'm using the same store for the requirements, I'll reload them as well. So if I do anything based off this, so let's say I add a new item, right? So I add a new planning item. Let's see if we can do this before we actually get there. So newest planning item. So if I do anything with this, so if I do 04 20 2024 assigned to me, create that, right? That'll be down at the bottom. I can go in here. If I create a requirement now, right? That notification came in behind me, right? Now, this requirement, actually, that came in pretty quick. So the system's running pretty fast right now. So what happened was that got added, that got pushed into the database, into the Kafka, then published, then stored in the view database, and then pushed as a notification down to my client before I actually managed to get away from the screen. So right now the system's behaving pretty quickly, but it might not always do. So this requirement's changed, told me, and this is just for my benefit right now, that this requirement is stored in the view now, right? So if I was to reload this and load the requirements, which if I move away from the screen right now, it'll break. That wouldn't be there. Oh, it would be there. It'll be reloaded now. But if it wasn't, if that event didn't happen, right, and I indicate to the planning item, oh, by the way, you have changes pending, then I will lose this requirement by virtue of having that in the same store as the same item. So that's not good. Canny writes a big wave of good vibes to the stream, jumps down and calls bright in a good mood call. Ways to run. Hi, Canny. How are you doing? Well, from the introduction. I'll assume. I am racked with indecision over design right this second. And as much as I don't like doing these things on stream, this is my only programming time, so I could have chosen not to stream and try and figure this out, or waffle on about this while I stream. At least when you stream and you're talking to yourself, it doesn't feel quite as crazy as just sitting here talking to yourself. Good. Wasting my whole morning with helping other streamers instead of doing my boring real-world job. Was it wasted if you were helping? Eh. Yes, but no one asked him. How's your water going? Well, this is not a water drink water day. This is a Wednesday. Water drink waters is Monday and Tuesdays. This is a regular project, and it's going poorly right now. Did you not realize it was Wednesday? Yeah, don't worry. I had to check that before. It dawned on me that I was like, "Is it really Wednesday?" So Go to training today, down that draws over my whole time plan. How's the current day project going? So what I'm trying to do, my recent set of work is really focused around trying to learn how to use the stores properly, so that I'm able to maintain the data on the client for continuity. So again, if I add a new planning item, I don't necessarily want to not be able to touch that planning item. So as soon as I save it, I have the ID. So now I can still make changes on the screen, but those changes might not have made it back round to the view. So I'm trying to establish some good patterns and practices with how I'm going to manage data on the screen, dealing with how things are told that, So right now I have uh, a notification system working. So when I add a new planning item, once it hits my view system again, it triggers an event that says, hey, planning item was updated. So that's why I get told about this. If I change a requirement or I add a requirement, I get told requirements changed for the planning item, right? So I am able to signal to myself that things have changed. What I'm debating is, if I do it this way, do requirements live under the object? So I'm struggling with the general state of data. Like, when do I indicate changes? When do I reload data? Right? Because if my requirement hasn't quite made it, but I reload the planning item, I will lose this data. Right? So I'll lose continuity. Maybe I'm focusing too much on the wrong things. Right? But I've kind of got this into my head now, and that's the problem. I've got it into my head that I have to solve the problem. But do I have to solve the problem? Is it a problem? Right? I need to kind of think this through, like the workflow. No. Requirements live with planning items. They are a component of planning items. So it makes sense to have them nested under planning items. So from the GraphQL perspective, right, this is what that looks like, right? So I say, okay, get me the planning item. Right. But the issue is the disconnected nature of the system, right? So if I add a planning item, what I do, I'm going to navigate. This is going to get lost because I'm not loading these currently. If I add a new planning item, the idea is that it will appear in the store, so I won't lose it. So how do I need to kind of figure out how to chart this properly, don't I? Otherwise, I'm about to wave my hands around in the air. We have a temporal issue. The problem with cutting of domains and microservices. Definitely. This is definitely a challenge caused by the way the system's designed. Absolutely. But again, it's one of those, the benefits outweigh the challenges in the long run. I can definitely see the benefits. If I add a new planning item, it will be available in this state, right? So the moment I add it, it is available. And that is because I show it on the screen when I've made the call to the server to say add. It's added it and given me back an ID. So I definitely have this planning item. I can refer to that planning item. I can change that planning item, right? I have an actual ID that is confirmed by the server as being that planning item. The view aspect has not updated yet, right? Because again, if we go to the diagram, right, this has happened. I've gone back and said, here's your ID. But this might not have happened yet, right? So the view aspect might not. So if I was to reload this screen, that planning item wouldn't reappear, right? If I broke the cache, which is fine. Because in reality, I'm just trying to make it convenient. I'm not trying to make it, right? If I was to log into a different client right now, that wouldn't be available because the view's not there. But again, for continuity, I'm trying to make sure that that user can proceed and work on things. Ha! And that's working because the store is valid, right? If I was to try and reload that, it wouldn't work. So I've added the planning item. It's gone off. It's hit here. It's given me an ID back. I've got the planning item. It doesn't make it through here immediately. That's okay. Does a push teddy bear in Shy's direction, pulls on it and shouts away with the arm of the flying teddy. Kind of time to eat since I haven't eaten yet. Yeah, it's generally a good idea to eat. Eating is necessary. I didn't eat dinner last night. I had a chocolate bar and a sip of a cold drink, and that was dinner. Huh. So what I'm currently doing is when I get the planning item back, I'm actually telling the planning item, by the way, you can reload. But if I store the planning item requirements, right? So if I use this method, if I was to reload this entity, my requirements might disappear. Or they would disappear because I don't have them. I don't reload them. Sorry. I had salmon, spaghetti, and spinach. As you plan to do. You made an entire application around it. No butter, though. So, right now, if I get I have this subscribe notifications feature, right? So I can actually watch for a category and say, if that category affects my store, then I'm going to patch my state of my store and mark the object, that entity, as having pending changes. I love food, so a food website would be perfect to build for me. Yeah. That's what I always advise is like if you're gonna make a project, especially one that you are you want to try and build for real, or not necessarily for real, but for building all the parts out of, do something that you care about. There's no point in just building something that someone suggests, or because you're never going to enjoy it. You're never going to have the passion for doing it. So always build what you're passionate about, especially in your spare time, because in your work time, you get to work on what someone else's passion project is, and that's not always easy. Even if that passion's driven by money, but normally, rather than actual passion. But it started as a I want to fix everyone's problems and make something good for people, but then became, oh, we need to make more money now. So that's why side projects are important. They keep your energy. But his passion, I just create. Yeah. Well, not all of us are mad scientists. They're just like. I'll remind you, you created a Twitch library because you didn't like the existing Twitch library. So there's a passion there. And your complete professionalism and passion made it that you were unable to not build everything into that library. I got more news about what the job is going to be. I'm going to learn how a register works, both programming and it looks like also installing, I think. I'll also be able to do back end if there's no register available to fix. Nice. Nice, Shy. That's awesome. Ads are going to start in a few minutes. If you are stuck behind the ads, I do apologize. But they are a necessary evil of Twitch. Mad Scientists, I like this title. If they want to hire me, that is. Well, stay positive. I mean, like you said, it went well. The interview went well. Your confidence was raised from yesterday. That's awesome. Yeah. That's a very good way to look at that. At least you get feedback. The only bad experience is one you don't grow from, essentially. So, okay. So, if you're watching the stream for the first time, the way the stream works is if you have thoughts, opinions, or questions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to ask, more than welcome to interact. Right now, I am kind of figuring things out, but it won't necessarily be a lot of coding, more learning and growing. It's right up on me to say this was my first ever interview. No, I mean that's self-reflection, right? Reflecting back on what you said, what you did, it's going to tear you apart if you worry too much about it. You never say everything perfectly. Some people pick up on some things, some people don't. But the reality is, you just got to kind of be, you know, you got to be you, right? You got to be you. You got to share what you care about and why you want the job. I mean, I want the job. Well, it's money is never a good idea. Um, uh, but then it depends on what you're going for, right? For me, it's always, um, I don't very much focus on why I want that job with those people. I focus on who I am and what I like to do and why I care about writing good software and building good products, right? For me, the passion that drives me is I want to produce something that someone can use and it will change their lives, right? It might sound arrogant or conceited, but the reality is when we're developing software, if we're developing software that people have to work with, etc., their lives can be made worse or better by it. So I like to put my energy and passion into that. They knew it wasn't about the job. I said I wanted the job in Big Park because I want work. Yeah. Yeah. But, it's what you'll learn as you do more of that, or you grow with that, is there's some ways of putting some things that say the same thing that don't say it directly, right? So, you know, I care about delivering good products. Like, ads. No benefit in that for Shy if I continue that conversation. While ads are running, I'm going to take the opportunity. 6. Ugh. I'm going to take the opportunity to step away. I'll take a quick break and I will be right back. Okay, back. Why is that showing? Why is that camera not showing me? Why is that showing? What? Do we hear my voice at least? Yeah. Why do we see a dumb camera? That's interesting. I'm stood right in front of the camera. And the camera's not even able to look at my chair, so let's see what happens. That was interesting. Yeah. It kind of snapshot in my chair. Okay. I raised the desk so that it helps my breathing a little bit. So okay. So yeah, Shy, I would say don't overanalyze what you discussed. Like, don't panic about it. Don't worry or get yourself in any sort of like concern over what you said or what you did. You know, hopefully they give you some positive and constructive feedback, whether they go with you or they don't. It's useful to know even when you get a job, um, to know why they accepted you and if they had any issues. But it's um, yeah, with time you kind of learn to um, say some of the things without saying them, right? By the way, even when you don't like annotation, I don't know how it's called. There's anything, something for loggers to automatically create them for a class? When you don't like annotations, I don't know. Is there something for loggers to automatically create them for a class? I'm not sure I follow. We talked about loggers to automatically create them for class. In Java, I do something like SL4J class name. Oh, so kind of an attribute that, like, you mean sort of, you need something like that would look like this, like that sort of thing. So it automatically creates a log property. So in .NET, you can inject iLogger you can do that. And then if you've got loggers enabled, yeah, when you've got logging enabled, yeah, that will work. You just inject the iLogger for the class that you're talking about, and then if you do it for the class you're talking about, it will. You can then control at the log level here. You can actually set up. I believe there's, so you can say, okay, well, if it's liquid sky dot endpoints, then I want info, right? So you can do it that way. I think you can do that down to the class level as well, so you can actually log specific classes higher. What do you prefer to use, Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code? I prefer neither. If I was doing .NET and I had those two choices, I'd go Visual Studio every time. VS Code is more popular, and it was suggested to me the other day that basically I try and do water drink water in Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio because it's more representative. Because I'm using a paid product, right? Rider is a paid product, and it's not necessarily accessible. And the tooling shouldn't matter, but it can can kind of matter, right? So, yeah, if I was going in Visual Studio Code, I'd go Visual Studio. I've not had a great experience of doing .NET code in Visual Studio. A lot of people have. C. Anhorn, he uses Visual Studio Code all the time. And has the tooling set up for it, so he's very comfortable with .NET in there. But yeah, if I was picking, I'd go Visual Studio. Yeah, I should actually do. I think I should actually do. If I'm going to do videos, I should probably do more in Visual Studio than I should in Rider. There's still a few videos I probably should work on. when I get this notifications process working, one of the things I want to do is build one on here's how to get GraphQL subscriptions working in an Angular project. Because the power is is, is pretty good. Okay, so I need to figure out what I'm doing with these. Yeah, anytime, Shy. This is what this stream's about, right? The stream is not. Um, yeah. The problem with JetBrains products, when you get used to it, you don't want to change away from it anymore. It's like a drug. I think once you get settled in any tooling, it's like, um, I I'm gonna say something. I may upset some people. Hopefully, CodeSpace isn't anywhere nearby. But if you're kind of a VI user, right, um, and you live in that world, I think you are brought into that world by someone who else is passionate about it, and you kind of shown this power, and then you can't leave that world, right? There's something about people who use Vi that is very, and I can't think of the actual right word without being offensive. Um, it's kind of like a my way or the highway sort of approach to it. So they don't believe anyone else is as good as them because they're clearly using the better editor. Um, Someone who knows how to use Vi effectively is incredible to watch, right? Like I've met some really it's an editor, so you'll have heard Vim or Vi or Emacs, etc. They're all kind of similar tooling. What it is it's a very keyboard focused curse the debugger. Is that an Irish chant? Finite, nice. Um, it's a keyboard driven editing technique. So basically everything's commands. So you don't navigate with a mouse or anything. It's right. If I want to move to the end of this line, I have to press a key. It's not just the end of line, etc. Um, if I want to go down to a point in the file, I have to like press a key sequence. Like I don't know what it is, but it might be like uh, I'm not even going to try, but it would be, if I want to go to the end of the file, I press Shift G and go to the end of the file. But if I want to go in edit mode, I have to press I to go into insert mode, and then I can start typing. So it's a keyboard driven thing. And the benefit is once you're using it, you don't have to touch the mouse. So um, you are solely keyboard. So I can understand why it's powerful, but it's extremely hard to use. And in an IDE like this, where I'm always using my mouse to move around, I don't feel that it's a strong. Uh, yeah, if you're just editing code files all the time, okay, you can, but it takes a lot of practice and a lot of energy. But and I think that investment in time often comes out in those people that use it because then they feel that they are superior. I don't know if that's true, but that's how it always feels. So my apologies if I offend anybody with that, but I've met some incredible Vi users, like remembering all those key sequences and stuff to navigate around files and become effective. If you watch LeClonk, right? LeClonk is amazing, and there are several. Primogen as well. Sole keyboard user. Well, the solution to explore is a taboo with Vim. Just use grep on the CLI to find your file. Yeah, right. Again, I like the way this works. I don't have an issue with using my mouse. I don't have an issue with using my keyboard. I can navigate around. If I do want to navigate to a file, I can press double shift and navigate to a file if I want to do it that way. You know, yes, power users, but I hate to use mouse at all. Yeah, you can still navigate around without it. So, anyway, that's my controversial opinion of the day. I think I've grown past any sort of elite behavior. I really don't like it when people are like, oh, you're using C#. That just irritates me. Or, oh, you're using Java. Oh, you're using I'm gonna play some more games. I'll look here though and still reach out. Shy, thank you very much. I do like the macro system having it. I've been doing a lot of JSON file editing, and that is helpful for repetitive tasks. The maths get tedious when you have a big monitor space. True. Just turn mouse acceleration on and flick it with your hand to get it across to the side and then move it. Yeah. Why no dark theme? Yeah. That's another one as well. Yeah. I just think we focus on the wrong things. Like people push their expectations on you, especially streaming. People definitely have expectations of how you should do things because they do it that way. And I'll admit, those people that have those sorts of skills definitely look cooler, so they generally get more viewers. I don't care if someone is using Windows, Mac, Linux, text editor, Rhino versus Eclipse, whatever that turns their wheel. But what I hate is when they start flaming their tools because they don't understand them and they're struggling. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The reality is, as long as we're productive, right? As long as we can do the things we need to do and we're happy doing them, right? I'm not opposed to learning something new, but I'm not going to go off again. I think I said it. Was in Seto Stream the other day? Like, I'm at the point where I do not have the time to go off and significantly slow myself down by learning a new way of doing something just because someone else says it's cool. Yes, I might be faster, but it might take me 6 to 10 months to get to that mastered level where I am fully in control of everything and I'm able to do everything I need to do on a daily basis now. I don't have that sort of time. Like, not being morbid, but I'm saying that this project is my focus. So why would I do a diversion and say, oh, well, I need to pick up a whole new language because it's cool, right? I'm in my 40s. If I was in my 20s, I'd be like, yeah, I can go and spend 6 months doing that. It'd be fine. I'll play around with that. And I have contemplated using some different languages, right? I've contemplated maybe trying to create a Rust module that interacts with the Kafka things, just to identify that you could mix and match things, just for the people's education, right? Like, just because I'm using .NET for everything doesn't mean I can't include a Rust module that will load the Kafka data and process it differently. But again, I've yet to find the use case that gives me a reason for doing that. I see a couple of co-workers that just use the text editing function of their ID and jump back to the console to do some stuff and struggle with that just because they don't want to invest their understanding of how their ID does it. Right. And we as human beings, once we find a way of doing something, will oftentimes latch on to doing that. So and that's why it's hard, because if you're watching someone do something and you know there's a better way, right? It's hard to educate them. Sorry. But then there's a blurred line of what is a better way, right? So if they're like, oh, well, you should use Vi, that's just their opinion on how a text editor should be done or how editing should be done, right? But if it's, oh, by the way, you can do that in the IDE, that might be time saving, right? They just might not have learned to do it that way, right? Because we all have different ways we learn, right? Some people, right? I'm not criticizing Shy. I'm just saying, I'm just pointing this out, right? With time and practice, right? You might get So yesterday I noticed that Shy was going to the menus to do the builds, etc. Right? And because the screen was shared, I didn't see the menu, but with time you learn the certain keyboard shortcuts, right? But that's a time saving thing. But some people, they don't do that. They don't think about those keyboard shortcuts that they could use. They just go up here and it's part of their process, right? And some people do that all the time. They'll follow what they know. Human beings, we are very strange. But anyway, yeah, Blender's confusing. Not learning shortcuts. Yeah, shortcuts are. Yeah, there's a lot of shortcuts I should probably learn. So right now, let me see if I can do this. Let me see if I can. Item. So what I've got here is this effect will basically watch the store, and if the thing changes, it will load. Right when I go into the screen for the first time, it will load. This is bad. Because no, it's not necessarily bad because this load all won't do anything if the state of the store has not been set to reload, which I'm going to get away from anyway. Right, but I've got to load. Do I need that? Let's find out. I learned this behavior with shortcuts back in Windows 98 when the mouse didn't get detected because of driver issues and I had to navigate Windows with keyboard only. Oh. Sorry. Kids nowadays can't imagine the struggle. Yep. Should have tried that on Windows 3.1. When you didn't have enough memory to load your mouse driver. Or you forgot to load the mouse driver when you were starting Windows. Because you didn't set your config sys file properly or whatever it was. So, okay. So not broken anything here. So again, what I'm focused on here is continuity, right? I want to make sure that I'm not just reloading. So what I want to do is I want to go into here and I want to show this. I've got this. I want this button to appear when it changes, and that's not going to work, is it? Let's go in here. Let's go in here. Line. No, what am I doing? That's not going to do anything. Here we go. So what I want to do, and that's going to be annoying because it's going to reload all the time. So I want to go into new item, and I want to say, okay, should see state has changed. Has pending change. Should see pending changes. Now, in this case, there's not a lot of pending changes, right? There we go. Okay. So that planning item. See, the problem is I don't have pending changes. But it's definitely got pending changes, right? So my feature over here, the intention is it's meant to mark or pending updates, whatever. Did I say pending changes or did I say pending updates? Has pending updates, yeah. So the goal there is to be able to tell from the server to say, oh, by the way, this object is dirty. There's changes to be pulled. In reality, in this event, no, it doesn't. But I don't know what I have and what I don't. So this item has changed for whatever reason. But this has pending updates doesn't get set on the entity. If I go to the model, right, I have has pending updates as a Boolean. But the way that the model loads, it will only load what it pulls down from the server. So the actual store has this, and I don't have pending updates as a thing in here. So what I'm concerned with here is continuing down a path of just kind of hacking things together with the store. Does this work even? Right? If I go here. Add a new item. New item number 4. Okay, so I got there with a notification. Target identifier. See, it's not breaking. But pending, and that is the idea I just looked at. 15272. State planning items. I just the other day had to navigate my keyboard to start my Bluetooth. I'm so glad they have search now. So the difference in these objects is this is an object that I've added manually. So the view model's reloaded. Hi, Schmecky. How you doing? So the patch state, the update state, that's meant to update identity. Imperialism, thank you for the follow. It's light attract books. Not messing around with dark mode there. Let's close that down though for a second. So my goal here is to indicate to this object that it has changes pending. So in the long term, I don't want to reload the entire store. I want to load the entity. I want to say this entity has changes pending, and therefore it might need reloading, right? So if something's not right, I have a refresh button available to me. Because essentially, the idea of this is that when I go into the planning item, right? When I go into my planning item, I'm adding the requirements. These requirements are added. I shouldn't lose them just because the store says, "Hey, this has pending changes." If I refresh, I'm going to lose them because they might not actually be on the client yet. But the idea of this is for continuity's sake, not for any other purpose. So I'm just trying to reason why I might do things the way I'm doing them, and am I using the stores correctly? Having those nested objects under the stores, is this the right thing to do? So I'm using, so for those of you who haven't joined before, what I'm building here is an Agile project management platform. And I'm starting with the planning concept, right? So I've worked with a lot of tools over many years, and I think there's some things we can do differently, right? So I'm going to try and build my own version. Madness, maybe, but this is my passion, right? I love the idea of being able to make developers productive. So the way the planning items work is, the idea is that you will add a planning item. And a planning item kind of describes a thing that needs to be added to the system, or a generalization of a piece, not necessarily a full project, but a component of a project. And then for that thing, you are going to add requirements, and requirements right now will have a title and an intended outcome. And that intended outcome is intended to describe what that thing should look like. And there'll be things like notes and attached files, etc., to individual requirements and to planning items. So what I'm working on right this second is I'm using NGRX signal stores to kind of store the data on the client, so that when I send it off, it's not lost. The way the system lays out so far is, when the client sends some data up, it goes into my write APIs and is stored in the individual component. So I'm not using necessarily microservices, some form of mini monolith, right? In that I'm breaking up the application into individual components. There might be one or many services in individual components, but they can kind of constitute a piece of the system. When I store that, I'm writing that to that database, and I publish that item to Kafka. I then have sets of Kafka consumers up, and one particular use case of this is my read consumers, where I store the data into a read database, and that is feeding a GraphQL API, which then the client can query from, right? So there's a bit of a disconnect, right? So if data is sent up there, the idea being that the store locally can hold the ID, because this will return the ID of the entity that it's stored, so that the client can know what object it's talking about and can communicate back and forth. It could send edits, it can send updates. They'll all still function, but the view state might not be in line yet. So the case I'm really working with here is the one of, what do I do if the user if the user refreshes, this item goes away if it's not yet in the review. That's a fact of the system, right? I'm just trying to make the process obvious to the user. And I haven't used GraphQL and signal stores before the last couple of weeks, so I'm kind of feeling my way through some of these things. Deflux, welcome in. How are you doing? So the way the stream works, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to share. This project is a very personal project. The code is not available for this one, unfortunately, but I do stream a lot of it. So you're more than welcome to contribute. Researching company for interview. Oh, that's today, yeah. Nice. It's funny. I don't often do much research on a company before I interview with them, because I kind of just I do the barest of things, and then I kind of go in, and I don't try and panic myself. Sally, welcome. How are you doing? And Maxa, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate it. Hope you are well. But yeah, so I mean, again, if anyone has questions, you're more than welcome to ask. Well, I guess this is the first interview in a few years, so I'm trying to brush up. Yeah, it's I had the 8-year gap between interviews. So I had 8 years. I interviewed one place, got job, moved on because I wasn't actually looking to jump. I just got the opportunity. Um, okay. So what I'm trying to figure out here is if this is meant to work, right? So with NGRX stores, I'm meant to be able to say, hey, this entity by this ID, because I've configured the store to have entities of planning item, and planning item has an ID field on it, right? Um, I'm meant to be able to say, hey, patch that item, patch the state. So this is kind of a generalized notification subscription to say, hey, mark that entity as having changes. But it does not work. Um, and the reason in here is that what I wanted to say is this this is not really for this use case. It's more for if someone else changes the item, I want to be told, hey, by the way, this item actually has pending changes. You might want to reload. If I've saved anything, it should still be there, but it might get lost. That's the big problem because if I go in here, right? Actually, let's go in here. If I go in here and add a requirement, right? So, new requirement. I found out yesterday one of the hard workers on the team is also quitting next week. Oh dear. So you're losing a team member in your current role as well, and they're a key contributor. I should see the requirement. So if I create this requirement, it's there, right? If I go back and come in, I should still be there, right? But if I reload, requirements change. So that notification means the view actually received that change. So if I refresh now, right, go back and go here, right, that's not there now because I'm not loading the requirements, but it would still be there if I did. Yeah, there's the requirement. So the argument can be made that I am making a system that is a bit more complex than it needs to be. Absolutely, right? This does seem overly complicated for a personal project. But the reality is I want to build this as a real product. And the only way I'm going to build this is I'm going to build it so that it will be able to grow, right? And I don't want to build a system that is kind of put together in a way that if it does grow, if it does become the product I want it to be, it can't scale. It can't, I have to make significant engineering effort to change it. Pardon me. So what I'm trying to work out is a lot of the little problems, a lot of the little challenges that I'm going to face, and I'm using this particular item as my focus. And the reason being, once I've got some of these things worked out, once I've flexed some of these things and actually learned some of the lessons I need to learn just by doing this piece, I'll be able to grow into the rest of the system and be able to build the pieces out with a little bit more confidence because I'm not kind of making it up as I go. Right. So I'm kind of getting stuck on something semi-deliberately. Right. So again, the problem is as I look at this item, right, if I add this item, if I create an item um, and it's not ready in the view yet, if I reload, this item disappears, right? Not ideal, but not necessarily incorrect. Again, the system's being pretty quick right this second. New planning item number 5. This is a new planning item. 04/20/2024. James Smythe. So if I create that and navigate down here, right, and then I refresh, that item isn't there now, but now I just got notified it is there. So if I reload now, it is there, right? So what do I want to focus on? Because I'm questioning whether the design is good, right? So I have planning items is my top level object, and requirements are my are attached to planning items. They go hand in hand. So this is the GraphQL query. Yo, Deflux, no mod here. If I give him mod, you guys might deal with the consequences. Yeah. Pardon me. So yeah, if you're new to the stream, this is one of 2 projects I work on the stream. Mondays and Tuesdays I work on a friendlier project that is fully open source, that is aimed at being more for the discussion and for design discussion, etc. This product is one of my own doing, and it's been building for months. And I've got a very dry throat. I think I might be hitting my limit of talking. So it might not be as approachable, but again, I'm still open to questions, so you're more than welcome to ask questions. Oh, this cough. I want rid of this cough so bad. What feels unnatural is putting load requirements on here. So I've gone through a few different designs with this, right? Where I've wanted to like make it flexible. There's certain things you can do with these stores, so I'm adding these features. Add requirement does work through the store, and that's why you see it afterwards. I apologize so much for the cough. I have nothing to quench it right this second, so yeah. It's not going to get any better, that is it? So what I remove from here is kind of a load. It seems redundant to load everything about the planning item. This is a challenge, right? So what I did initially was when I click into a planning item, right? So I have the planning item. I click into a planning item. I then go and load the detailed version of the planning item. So this page loads all the summary information, right? So I have all the planning items by default into my store. When I click on this, I then go and request this more detailed version, and I populate the data into my client, right? What I could do is kind of patch the state in there so I know the pieces that I need to add, the extra requirements on top of my planning item. So I don't necessarily need to request these pieces of information because they're already handled. Like even that. So that chunk doesn't need to be there, but everything else needs to be there. But it seems like this store is getting very complicated, and I can't find any examples of these stores where there is nested objects. I just can't see any from the examples I have available to me, and no one seems to want to tackle that, right? So that made me think, hey, well, maybe there's actually a need for a requirements store and a planning items store, and a requirements store knows how to deal with requirements for a planning item. Sorry. But that seemed, again, so then the actual page here would have to load up multiple stores, right? And I'd have to load all of this data up. So that doesn't feel any better. Right? So I'm trying to find the balance of, let's remove that being that I'm not using it right second. Yeah, I'm trying to find the balance of readable, maintainable, flexible, and it's a struggle. And this would still be a problem with Blazor, right? The design would be different, but the problem would still be the same. So it doesn't matter what framework I'm using. That yes, I'm trying to do something here that means that I've got a disconnect between my server and my client, so the data on the client is immediately available, even if it's not gone all the way around the houses on the server side. But yeah, how to strike that balance, I don't know. So if you've used NGRX, if you've used Redux in React, etc., I'd be interested to know of any experiences anybody has. I really am looking for some kind of help here with this sort of stuff, because the client side is just not my forte, that's for certain. And I feel more and more uncomfortable. Because what I want to do, what I'm thinking is, what should happen is initially, if I go the detail approach still, this would be kind of this.store.load detail for identifier, right? And by virtue of patching that state, this will happen. So in my query here, this would be async load detail for planning item identifier ID is a string, right? And this will be const state equals get state store as planning item state. Planning items service dot fetch one planning item ID. So fetch one is a method I've already implemented on the store, and that's this query, right? So essentially, I don't need that data, right? The goal would be to do I want to? That would refresh the data. So if the data hadn't been reloaded, this would pull the latest version of that data down, right? But it might be excessive because I've got to do everything then, right? assign user ID name. I'd really be interested in having that discussion. Because the challenges remain the same, right? If I want to have state on the client, yeah, I'm not debating it. I'm just like, it, this is why I like the idea of water drink water, where we can kind of discuss this sort of stuff. We could actually build a client in a different framework to identify the differences in how we might approach something. Because there's a lot of things where it's like, oh, well, you just use this. Well, your comfort level with any framework, and I'm not deliberately digging at Blazor defaults, I'm just saying in general, your comfort level with a framework means that you are going to be more productive with it because you've used it before, right? Once this becomes natural, then it's kind of easy to go to. But right now, I'm kind of pushing back on some things because I don't understand maybe the concepts, or I don't understand the idiomatic way of building these stores. And this is a common problem for all developers, right? When you come to build something for the first time, who do you go to for advice, right? What's the right way? Because that's always a challenge we have, right? What's the right way? Well, the right way is the way that works, but what works, right? So this feels wrong, right? It feels like I'm kind of kludging things in and stuffing things into boxes that they don't necessarily belong in, but I don't know any better way of doing it, right? Maybe someone comes along and says, oh, well, by the way, you can do this. Great. Let's go off and learn. But I need that kind of discussion. So when you're developing something for the first time, it can be a struggle. And if someone sees something and they know a better way, then their way is obviously better because they've done it before, right? But if I was developing a Blazor client for this, right, I'm still in this world of, and a lot of developers do, and that's how you end up with legacy systems that are, oh, what were they doing here, right? And that's why I'm trying so hard on this project to not just build a system the quickest way. I'm trying to build it in a way that I understand the components, right? I am doing full stack, right? I don't like this idea, but I'm going to have to become a little better on the client side to try and make sure that I can do full stack effectively. As much as that's going to cause me to have lots of back and forth and lots of challenges, because I can't be an expert in every single field. I'm going to have to be good enough at everything. So everything's a challenge. So what this should do is, so this comes back with a planning item, right? If I load everything in there in fetch one, essentially I should just be able to do patch state, store, update, entity, ID is planning item ID, changes is requirements, so that in theory should patch in the changes, right? So that should patch in, I should be able to load requirements, but I'm not doing that now. Awesome. For Schmikey before. I assume that they're not still around, being that I didn't change to dark mode. I get it. But being that I'm in light mode here, it doesn't really make a difference. So when I click on, I gotta figure out what I've added a requirement for. Why doesn't that make a GraphQL query? Oh, this is break. Does have an error in it? No. Nope, no errors. Planning items. So that's not loading that initial thing. So why are you not loading that? Well, do not stand on procedure. Feel free to do more Blazor on stream. I'll be sure to join. Yeah, I'm not building this client in Blazor. We do Blazor on Mondays and Tuesdays. I want to. It would be nice to figure out a way of demonstrating the differences, though, or at least discussing the differences, because I would like to know, like, maybe I need to get a better idea of the patterns that I'm using here and how they apply to different frameworks. And again, the problem I'm solving here is so. Let me bring up the diagram. If you were doing this system, right, which I know you wouldn't, I know you don't necessarily agree with the design here, right? But let's say you were doing this system. I just remembered that you were having a discussion with Shy, so some of that was directed at Shy. But my question still stands. If you were designing this system, right, or you were building the UI for this system, right, with Blazor, I have a write side. So when I save something on the client, it writes to the server, right? That distributes messaging, which means that the thing that you're reading from when you're querying data back off the screen, that might not be updated right now. How do you deal with that in Blazor? Right. Let's say you want to continue working with the object. Again, my focus is continuity, right? If I have the item, I have the ID, etc. Well, it's the challenge of, and I apologize, ads are about to start, and I am about to finish up the stream. But one line, hello. Right. I guess I'm asking for that. The thing that I'm working with here is I'm using the state management to store the data. What sort of techniques do you have available there? Well, say that the underlying architecture wouldn't have anything to do with how you Blazor the UI, right, is abstracted away from the backend using a service layer. EF and SQLite. So using WebAssembly, you have SQLite available to you. Finished a major change, so I'm taking a quick breather. Nice. So you created a data layer in the client. Ads will start. I'll see through the ads, and then we'll raid out. But yeah, can do. I would do that for apps I would run offline if I was using PWA. Okay. Using local storage. Right. But I mean, these are. I mean, the challenge still remains because the data synchronicity. But again, I'm just trying to learn how people would approach this from a different framework perspective, right? The amount of coding I would have to do is still significant. It's just using a different way to answer it. But again, that's not specific to Blazor. It's an approach you would use in whatever client you create. Right. Essentially, that's what I'm doing. I mean, I'm just not using IndexedDB. The signal store is allowing me to update the UI at the same time. Right? So if the data changes, it will actually reflect in the UI. Yeah. But either way, it still spends significant effort building out a storage mechanism to do what I'm doing. Because again, my focus is on continuity. Why is that not loading? That's driving me nuts. Oh, did I actually introduce it? Helps if you actually do it, doesn't it? So you're gonna wait for the signal message once data is ready. So essentially, I'm using GraphQL WebSockets because it's all hooked into the data, but I'm essentially using what SignalR would do, right? I'm just not using a different technology. I'm blending it in. So what happens is in my store, I just say with notification subscriptions for planning items, and this actually subscribes to notifications and says, okay, if the category is planning items, then I care about this and I'll update this entity, right? So that's why that's that. So this just has to match what I have on the server when I publish the notification. If I was pushing down specific data, that would be different. The difference with Blazor as the UI is how you write your interactive components. So whatever method you're using to cache your data and signal your data was created to receive, you'll still do similarly in Blazor. Just tell the UI to re-render, which would only render the parts of the DOM that have changes. Gotcha. So is that actually loading? Yeah, that is. No requirements. Can't find one I had requirements to now. Ah, there is requirements on that one. It's not updating the requirements. So that update state is not working, I bet. What you describe would be done in Blazor as well. Subscribe to a service signals changes have happened in the component that displays the data. No. No. If you're interested in seeing that, I can show it on stream the next time you happen to be around. Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing. I'm interested in, one of the. I always like the idea of having my options open for the client side because I feel that is the thing that changes the most. If you can refresh your client without changing massive things on your back end, I think that's a very good thing for any product because you can change the look, the feel, everything without changing drastically anything on the server side because that's where most of your behavior is, right? So I'm always interested in keeping my options open from a client perspective as much as I'm going to, I like Angular, right? I'm not debating, there are not pros and cons. Could I be quicker in Blazor? Potentially, because I'm in C# world, right? I'm happier there. Well, I use Blazor, so I can't do that. My server is my client, right? But there's other things I've got to learn, etc. And at this point, you could argue that okay, well, I'm still having to learn all this. So what's the difference between picking up Blazor and doing that? There might be none. At this point, I'm pretty much convinced though that query, this does not do anything. Don't need that. So the concept here is I'm going to patch these changes in there, right? So I go here, I go down to planning item 4, this has a result, it has requirements. If we just keep seeing Blazor, absolutely agree. I think you're architecting your backend and the client service in a way where you can change client. Yeah. I just think there's a lot of power to be had in being able to do that. Like, I get the whole BFF thing, but I don't want to build different APIs for different clients, right? And actually, considering I'm using GraphQL, actually that could still support that feature where different clients exist and do different things because they get different data. But it's it's something I don't want. I don't want to build a front end just for a back end just for GraphQL and just for Angular, and then say, oh well, I need a different client, therefore I'll build a completely different API. Um, have any of you done Blazor with GraphQL? Why does so that's meant to work, right? That is meant to work. GRX. What am I missing? It's not erroring. Signals. Signal store. Entity management. Updating and removing. Update entities. I have not as well. I've been using server, so not much need to create an API of late. But I dropped using GraphQL because it seemed like an additional layer on top of Entity Framework and a lot of repeated code. That I can definitely see. I can appreciate that. Because of the way I'm building this, because the view is a constructed set of data, separate to the actual thing. Though, I decided that this is actually viable because now I can actually restructure this view code, store the data in whatever format I want to best be achieved by the queries on this side. So building a general API with methods, yeah, I don't benefit much from. So yeah, that might be in that bucket. Updating and removing. Update entity. Entity ID changes. So right, it's meant to be ID, planning item, changes, requirements. Patch state, store, update entity. Right, that's everything I need. I hope it's one position that you'll be happy to stick with for a while. Manufacturing, I kind of want to break into finance, but the finance does decide a lot more crowds. Yeah, finance is going to be a lot harder. So I don't get what I'm doing wrong here. So I've got entities on the store. This is not failing. 9:13. I'm gonna have to. Sadly, I'm gonna have to call it. Um, you still going? Okay, I know where we're going. So I'm going to take you over to someone who needs to stream a little bit more. um, Rumbling Geek's been building some cool stuff. He's been building a matrix display, and he's testing that and thinking with that, which is very cool. So for chat, etc., that's pretty nice. I'm going to continue working on this. This should work. So I should see requirements here. This is driving me nuts now. So I'm going to have to figure out what I'm doing wrong, why it's not reloading the state, etc., because that should fire. At this point, like I said, I'm kind of committed to doing this because I think that using Angular here is a good option. But I'm kind of assessing, am I making things more challenging for myself? Am I designing this correctly? If Exocamil streams, he's an Angular expert, right, and knows a lot about the single store stuff. If I can try and figure out how to get my code into a place where I can demonstrate it, maybe he can give me some guidance on things. But that'll be challenging. But anyway, I'm going to get going. I'm going to go get a drink of water because my voice is getting drier and drier. We lost everyone there. So I'll raid out to Rambling Geek. Thank you very much for joining me. Deflux, if I don't see you again before your interview, have a great time. Have fun. Show that passion and energy, and best of luck. Take care, all. Thank you.